Okay, this shouldn't take too long.
Pokemon. We all love them. We all have our favourites.
Every Pokemon has its fan. Okay, maybe not him.
But the question that no one's asking
is who is the most used Pokemon of all time? And why is it not Wooper? Well, what do I mean by most used? Well, what is the most used Pokemon by non-playable trainers in every mainline Pokemon game? What do trainers pick the most?
Okay, so let's go over some ground rules.
This does not include Pokemon I myself have used in each game.
Mainline games, that is. No spin-offs allowed, and I'm including Legends Arceus in that too, so it won't be counted. Also, every generation will be counted, but only once. So for Generation 1, for example, we'll only be counting Red and Blue. Not Yellow, not Fire Red and Leaf Green, not Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. God, there are a lot of these. And I obviously won't be counting every Pokemon twice. Just each of the exclusives, so one game doesn't get left out. However, I will not be doing this for Gen 3, because if I pull the results from Ruby and Sapphire, we'll just end up with a lot of fire or water types respectfully.
Well, actually we would just be left with Carvanhas and Numel. Emerald is much more balanced, so we'll be using the data from that game instead. I'm also not including DLCs, because fuck DLCs, am I right?
Now let's talk about Gold and Silver.
I will not be counting the Kanto post-game, because that will definitely sway things in the direction of Gen 1. I'm actually not counting any post-games in my data. And don't worry, I'll be counting every single Pokemon. The underdogs matter too. And if a trainer has a Pokemon twice, it counts. Why shouldn't it? If a trainer has multiple options of Pokemon like their starter, I will be counting one of each. Now for the next rule, I have thought about this one a lot, and I've decided if a trainer uses the same Pokemon twice, that does count for 2 points towards that Pokemon. After all, a trainer can decide, and sometimes does, choose to drop certain Pokemon from their team. So for example, Barry carries and evolves a Starly throughout the game of Diamond and Pearl, and I think that should count. After all, he didn't have to use that Pokemon each time, he just chose to. And the last rule...
I can't promise this is 100% foolproof without making any mistakes, or if there is, leave me alone, I'm just a human, I make mistakes, and there probably is, and I don't really know why I'm doing this.
That being said, here are our games. Now let's find out once and for all, who is the most basic take Pokemon.
Cue the montage! Okay, montage over. Okay, I did it. 1 week, thousands of Control Fs, tens of Excel sheet troubleshooting, and 1 therapy session later, what am I doing with my life? I have it. The most used Pokemon of all time. Just kidding, Miratus didn't even make it to the top 500.
Fucking loser.
But before we get into the number 1 slot, in fact before we even get to any of the list, let's go over some of the fun trivia I found using this data.
First of all, do you know what the most used Pokemon is in Ruby and Sapphire?
Did you guess Wurmple, Magikarp maybe, another water type?
Well, it is a water type. It's Marill.
Yeah, the most popular Pokemon in Gen 3 is a Gen 2 mon. And Marill too. Who would have guessed that? Oh. You okay there, little guy? Okay, next question. What's the most used Pokemon in Gen 1? Did you say Caterpie, Zubat, Magikarp again? Well, it's Koffing. Who uses Koffing? Oh, yeah. Final question. What Pokemon has the most trainer battles? Did you say Emerald?
Because you're right, nerd.
Okay, just wanted to point those out, but without further ado, let's get into the list. Now let's address the Dom fan in the room. Of course, the earlier a Pokemon was introduced into the franchise, the better the chance it has being higher on the list. But these results have surprised me. So let's start with some interesting observations, shall we?
What's place 69, you ask?
Get your mind out of the Castelia sewer.
It's Arcanine.
Sorry, Bellsprout, but Arcanine got that dog in him, if you know what I mean. Okay, where's my best boy? Sorry, got a little dark there. On another note, some legendaries have been used by trainers. Aside from some post-battle games like Rainbow Rocket where Giovanni has a Mega Mewtwo, Sada and Turo do technically use Crydon and Miraidon respectfully. Can we talk about starter Pokemon, because this one's really strange. Looks like Gen 4 starters are used more than I thought, and when I looked into it, it weirdly makes sense. This random Picnicker has a Piplup, regardless of what starter you choose. And Gardenia uses a Turtwig. When you play a 4th gen game, this sort of feels normal, but looking back at each games, this is the only time a gym leader has used a starter, and I have to ask why. It just seems like a random choice. Besides, where did she even get this Turtwig from? Aside from these two examples, there are of course Leon and Lance, who both use Charizard. Goddamn favoritism. Now if we go to the bottom of the list, let's look at some Pokemon that have never been used. There are a lot of legendaries here, which makes sense, but unless I counted wrong, no one, and I mean no one, has ever used Ferret? Poor thing. Now remember, this isn't including post-game, and there are some trainers who have used it, but again, it doesn't count. Sorry. If I've made a mistake, let me know in the comments.
And while you're at it, please subscribe. It helps a lot with the channel and most of you aren't already.
Some other Pokemon that have never been used include Wynaut and Beldum, unless you count Black 2 and White 2, which again, we didn't. Another one is Omastar. Sorry Brock, I don't know why you waited until now to use him, but too late. I did count one shiny Pokemon. It might not be what you expect. It's from a trainer in Sun and Moon, and they use a shiny Exeggcute. The eggs.
It actually scored 161, which is pretty high.
Some Pokemon did surprise me, like Mudsdale, who placed 210. It may not seem that high, but this is a Gen 7 mon we're talking about. It scored higher than Pokemon like Breloom, Paras, Lapras, the list goes on. Point is, I didn't expect it to be this high on the list, but I approve. Houndoom also surprised me at place 59. I get he's a Gen 2 Pokemon, but I just don't remember seeing him that much in any game really.
And who knew Loveday would just be shy of the top 100? Why would you ever want to use this thing? Sorry Loveday fans.
Now, I'm going to be honest, when it comes to the top 10, there are a lot of Gen 1 Pokemon here. Wait, there is one Gen 2 Pokemon here? Oh. Let's just leave him alone. The second highest Gen 2 Pokemon goes to Crobat. Surprisingly, all of these guys managed to make good enough friends with Golbat. But here are some Gen 3 Pokemon that have beat Crobat. Yep. That's right. We have Pelipper at place 24, Wingull at place 25, and in first place for Gen 3 at place 16 we have Roselia. This is probably due to the help of Gen 4, which gave this little guy 2 new mons in its evolution line. What really surprised me though is the highest place 4th gen Pokemon being Croagunk. I honestly love this little guy. Who isn't pleased with this result? Okay, let's get to the top 5 you've all been waiting for. In 5th place we have Machop. Not that surprising, and it's been used a total of 71 times. 4th is Abra. Now, unless someone's winning big at the casino, I'm not sure how Abra are getting caught this many times. Side note though, this does make sense as Abra is in the following games' regional dexes. Pretty much all of them. In 3rd place we have Gyarados. This would make more sense to me if Magikarp hadn't scored at place 14, although I know a lot of important trainers do use this mon. In 2nd place we have Geodude at 85 uses. Somehow didn't see this one coming. Graveler only placed 64. Wait, I've just realised. We finally get to find out who's the most popular bird Pokemon. Let's settle this debate once and for... Oh, that's not really surprising. But who scored the... that's also not really surprising at all.
What's that? I'm stalling?
So, you think I'm stalling?
Okay, fine. The most objectively popular Pokemon of all time goes to... Zubat. Wow, who could have seen that coming?